This is Sala with Drive-thru Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on another episode. I'm grateful for your support and all the wonderful stuff that you guys keep doing with the emails and the sharing of these episodes to other people. Without you guys, I don't think this would have gotten anywhere. So keep on doing it. I appreciate it. I can't say thank you enough. So you'll probably hear me say thank you in every episode. It is just makes sense and is good karma. All right. I want to talk today about childhood trauma. And not any specifics here because it is a drive-through situation. So we don't want to use any details unless it's going to be relevant. And if I open up a can of worms, I want to make sure I close them by the end of this session with us, right? Or this episode. I want to make sure that gets resolved. I've been getting many people coming into therapy with unresolved childhood issues, whether it's childhood sexual abuse, being a witness to domestic violence and neglect as a child. All of those are definitely different forms of trauma. In a situation where a child lives in a home where chaos was the norm. And the child will grow. And what ends up happening to a lot of the patients I'm seeing as adults that have gone through this trauma is that they have avoided addressing this side of them, this past. And this is a self-preserving method that we all use, believe it or not, is to avoid looking at our past because we don't know how to do it without negative feelings, or we don't know how to give it another interpretation than the one we got. So if you think about it, that little child, that inner child is still there, that has not resolved their past, that have not walked into safety in adulthood. And you'll know that we're kind of hurt on the inside because we'll also demonstrate it as adults on the outside. And we'll demonstrate it a lot through anger, defensiveness, low self-trust, low self-love. We'll get into really messed up relationships, and that's another demonstration of low self-love. Our boundaries are going to be shot up all to hell. We tend to engage in self-destructing or self-sabotaging behaviors. So even if let's say, have really good home, good job, money, I will mess that up by adding an unstable situation. Like I'll be in a good relationship and then I'll cheat on my partner, or I'll start drinking and acting out. Whatever variation is kind of show up, and it's going to eventually become the currency that we deal with ourselves with. And that's not really good news. But today I'm going to tell you how we can help begin the healing process for that inner child. Because if we don't do that, it'll eventually seep in all areas of our life. We will never be able to enjoy because we have, in some ways, not learn to integrate our past into our own self and in acceptance at this moment. And many of us might be asked, why is it important to integrate it? Well, I think that's actually the main part of the healing process, is really not avoiding it, but accepting it. And most people say, well, I've accepted my past. I know what it is. I know I can look at it. I know what it is. But they still have the same emotions or the same logic they've been using for a long time. And in some cases, it's the same logic they were using as a child. And so this child never grew into safety. This child never healed and continues to replay the same story in the same way with the same outcome. So to bring that kiddo into safety, we really have to teach this child to heal by the adult side of us, learning to accept the facts of the past, relieving ourselves of the responsibility of the trauma that had occurred, because it is not our responsibility, and really truly taking no responsibility. If you think about the self-talk that you have, if you're an adult that has gone through childhood trauma, and that you tend to be self-destructive, so there's no really healing in there yet, you'll find that your self-talk is really cruel to you. It's not compassionate to you. It's very intolerant of you. It lacks patience with you. It's just terrible. And it keeps rejecting you. This is important for you to hear, that if you are talking to yourself this way, if you are collecting nasty things about you, nasty information about yourself, or keeping score of what you've made mistakes doing and why you're no good and all that, and like you're not allowed to make mistakes, if you are doing that, it is gonna stop you from having a fulfilled life or living in peaceful times or peaceful moments, because you are going to sabotage that on the inside. You can't even enjoy a simple activity without you sabotaging it on the inside. That's really the effects of trauma. That's really the effects of our lack of self-love. So going back to the inner child, we must talk to the child like they are to be loved unconditionally. Even though, unfortunately, they've never had the parent or the support that they may have needed at growing up, we need to give that to them now. This really does work. We need to start talking to this child instead of rejecting them, instead of blaming them for what they could not have controlled. We need to give them a high five for what they've actually survived and what they were able to do, even with so little resources and so little knowledge. We can't keep going back to that kid as an adult and judging that kid and rejecting them for what they went through. They've been rejected enough. And it is needed for us right now as adults to look back at this child and start embracing them. Start embracing our past. Start looking at it with no shame. And understanding the facts is going to help you quite a bit. It'll save your ass. Because the facts are really that, let's say, I lived in a home full of neglect. I'm relieving myself, my child self, of the responsibility of anything that would have happened at that time. And I would have to give my child self the high five for surviving it. I don't need to talk to this child in a nasty way. We don't need to reject any version of us. We need to accept all versions, to include that child we leave right there in the corner crying in a fetal position, still there, not healing. We need to help this child get up and walk into safety. And every time we meet our child, our innocent self, our helpless self, we don't need to shame that helpless child, that innocent child anymore. Really consider the healing process. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. We need to pull out the stuff that we might have to look at and really just look at the facts of the situation rather than adding the little extra stuff that you guys do to shame yourselves. I'm not exempt from the bunch. I certainly had to work on that child myself, right? On my inner child. There's no way I could walk you through it if I had not done it myself. And what's beautiful about this is that once you realize that all this suffering, all this anger, all this self-rejection you've been going through, once you realize all of that is controllable, you will be freed to no longer hold a grudge on yourself and to move forward into safety, into self-love, and allow goodness to come in. It is really the barrier to seeing the goodness that happens in front of you. If we are burdened with all of that and our inner child is still rejected, we're going to keep punishing them subconsciously. And when something good comes along, I will think it's an accident, or I will probably mess it all up, or have some kind of cynical perspective towards it, instead of thinking, man, I'm worthy, and I'll allow it in. And that's what healing can do for us. It will elevate the quality of our life from the inside out. It's incredible. Once we release and make peace with the child version of us, that we may have rejected, that we may have not tolerated due to their helplessness. But if you think about it, they are survivors, because without them, we wouldn't be here today. So whatever they had to do, whatever those little kiddos had to do, they did. And we no longer need to reject them for it. Even if their families rejected them for it, even if the world rejects them for it. I don't care, as long as you don't reject your own inner child. That's all we need to do. On the inside, I need you to stop rejecting them and start embracing them, bringing them into safety. Take them out for ice cream. Take them out for a walk. You should be hanging out with your inner child all day, every day, having fun. So you're no longer hating being alone by yourself, because by yourself will be a lot of fun when you accept all of you, every version, to include your inner child. So think about that, reflect on it. I know that you guys will do something with it. It's important to also note that when you are working on accepting the past, it is best to do it with another person, because if you were to do it with yourself, sifting through this, you'll only come up with your own logic that you've been coming up with. It's difficult to challenge yourself because you'll be using the same logic and it's not going to be useful. But when you are with another person, a therapist, for example, it's going to help you quite a bit to start challenging and looking at the stuff. Really start embracing new ways of looking at your past and healing it. And if you go to a therapist and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Keep going to therapy. It doesn't mean that all therapists are not going to be beneficial to you. You just have to find the right one for you. Once you do that, it'll be great. You will really benefit from it. So start accepting your inner child, because it is a version of you. And if you reject any part of you, you are not going to be able to live the most fulfilling life on the inside, also out, and learn to enjoy it, because you will be in the way. You will be in your own way. I hope this brings you guys some peace, and I hope it motivates you to start working on that inner child and to really embrace that kid. Finally, speak up for that kiddo on the inside of you. Don't reject him. Don't push that child back. Bring him or her forth and allow them to have a voice within you. And it is only then that you'll truly, truly see the magic of innocence and respect your whole journey all the way without rejecting any part of that. And that's who you really walk with all day long. You. So that relationship better be intact, better be healing, cannot work against you. I'm sending you love, light, and some ice cream for your inner child. This has been an episode of Drive-thru.